Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us for our bi-weekly COVID meetup and check-in. My name's Amelia. I am facilitating the meeting today. For our agenda, we are going to be doing our 3 deep breaths. We're going to talk a little bit about COVID-19 aerosol spread, not aerosol spray, gosh, aerosol spread. And I actually found out that the official search term for this is airborne transmission. But there have been a couple questions that have come up about this, so I figured we could talk about that. I wanted to spend a little bit of time just kind of sharing and talking about supporting schools and families with students, especially as the beginning of the school year is starting. And we might have questions and maybe we can share some information. So that's not really meant to be a formal discussion, just sort of a sharing time. And then time for free discussion and for anything else that people would like to bring up, as well as just a few announcements and some new resources. As always, this is being recorded. I will upload this to our Vimeo channel and send the information out on Wired. And I'll also be monitoring the chat box for any questions. And everyone's talking about spray on COVID. Yes, no, please do not buy anything like that. That was a weird Freudian slip. So the first thing that we'll do is our 3 deep breaths. And this wonderful picture is actually from our very own Jennifer Burnell. She took this photo and shared it with state library staff in the chat box, in our chat message group. And I thought it was really lovely and also very calming. So for our 3 deep breaths today, if you guys can just sit up straight, put your feet on the ground, make sure you move your shoulders down and back, try and open up your rib cage, and really try and send those breaths deep into your belly. A lot of times we're very used to breathing with our upper chest and our shoulders, but really try and make your belly move up and down as you're breathing. So feel free to put your hands on your chest or on top of your legs or wherever is comfortable, and we'll do 3 deep breaths. So inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Awesome. So the next topic we're going to talk about is COVID-19 airborne transmission. So I've listed some things on here for recommended reading on this topic. This question actually came up in the school librarian COVID meetup that happened last week. But I figured I would address it here because I imagine that this is a question that probably many people have. So let me actually go ahead and share some of the links that I have here. I went out and did a little bit of searching. These first few links that I'm dropping into the chat box are actually studies and academic papers on this topic. I found these through PubMed, which is a database of medical related literature and journal articles and papers. I won't get into PubMed, but if anyone, on a side note, is interested in PubMed and some of the resources that are available at the National Library of Medicine, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk about it, especially if you're looking for timely academic medical literature on COVID or other medical topics. So feel free to reach out if you'd like to talk more about that. These 4 articles that I've put into the chat box are definitely like research studies, academic papers. Some of them are a little bit more, I think some of them are a little bit more focused on the methodology compared to just general results, but feel free to take a look at them. I thought they were sort of a good representation of the kinds of studies that were out there. I'm also including a few other links that I will explain once I've stuck them on the chat box as well. So feel free to ask any questions about this. In general, regarding airborne transmission of COVID, there's not really a cut and dry answer as to whether or not how airborne transmission works, and in particular with HVAC systems. That's what a lot of questions have been raised. So there's a lot of research that's happening right now and not a lot of conclusive results. Even with the completed studies, it's kind of hard to definitively say whether airborne transmission is a significant risk, because environments and study methodologies and the way things are set up are so different. However, what people can agree on is that airborne transmission can't be ignored as a potential infection risk. And so a lot of the papers that I've read have said it should be included as part of overall infection reduction strategy. So the origins for this question was, I think in April, there was a draft of a scientific paper that was posted, which the headline was something about like COVID outbreak linked to air conditioning, something or other in someplace. And so it got picked up a lot in headlines and media attention. And so that's kind of why you might have heard of air conditioning can cause COVID to spread. So looking into this, for a lot of HVAC systems, a lot of them do just sort of recirculate air in buildings, which means they don't draw in fresh air. If you open up a window, you are bringing fresh air from outside into an enclosed space, and there's a lot of changeover of the air in a space. So some HVAC systems do this. A lot of HVAC systems just sort of recirculate air, so they're not drawing in the fresh air. But with any air system, there are particulates in the air. And what people have recommended is, in addition to kind of opening a window if you can, and if the weather allows, if you're not able to do that, some people recommend installing a filter. It's unclear what size filter would be best. What I've seen is the MERV 12 or MERV 13 filters. Those are the ones that I've seen most often. MERV stands for Minimum Efficiency Reporting Value, and it's a system that's used to evaluate the efficiency of an air filter to see how good it is at catching particulates of various sizes. So the higher the rating, the higher the air filtration capabilities. I think it's on a scale of 0 to 16. So 12 or 13 is the rating that I've seen most often recommended. So you can see, I think link 5 that I put into the chat box kind of talks about the origins of linking air conditioning with COVID spreading, as well as just general recommendations. And then link 6 is actually the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, Air Conditioning Engineers. They have a COVID-19 page with recommendations on there that you can look at for both, I think, residential and commercial use spaces. All of the things on there are just recommendations. Again, there's been a lot of research, but nothing where super conclusive results can be drawn. But that's a really good place to start, especially if you're looking to take a look at your HVAC system and see what might be happening. If you look at Article 7, that's a really, really great article that actually Tracy shared with me that kind of gives a broad overview of ventilation and air filtration and COVID prevention. And it has some good tips in there for how to measure the, I guess, changeover in air from outside air and inside air. And you can do that by measuring carbon dioxide levels in a space. And then another thing to consider is air cleaners. So there's an air filter, and then there's air, well, I think the more common term is an air purifier. And so that's also another option that these articles have mentioned. There's a lot of stuff on here or out there on airborne transmission of COVID. Like I said, it's hard to draw super conclusive results from things, but these are some of the recommendations that are out there, and it's something that's still sort of being researched. If anyone else has other information or questions that they'd like to share, please do feel free to. If you all are already thinking about this or implementing things in your library, feel free to share that as well. But in case you all have heard of this or were wondering about it, I wanted to provide some links and give you a starting point to looking into this. Any questions about that? Okay. Cool. Well, feel free to ask any other questions that you might have, and feel free to send me anything that you'd like to share if you find anything that's relevant. Okay. Jennifer just asked, wasn't there a new filter made in Texas? That might be entirely possible. I did not look into specific filters. So if you guys have recommendations on things that have worked for you, feel free to put those into the chat box. But I know that there were updated recommendations on the ASHRAE. I don't know how you pronounce that acronym, but on the ASHRAE page. But I don't know if they recommend specific brands or anything like that. But Jennifer, if you know more, please feel free to share, and I'll let everybody know from your comments in the chat box. Moving on, this was just a question that I was kind of curious about, and it was sort of linked to the school librarian meetup that happened last week. That meetup, by the way, was recorded and is available on our Vimeo channel, and we will be having another school librarian meetup in the beginning of September. The date will be announced fairly soon for that. But when we met on August 11th, there were still a lot of questions that people had. Some schools had released their reopening plans, some schools hadn't. It was still sort of a wait and see situation. So I'm not sure at this point if more places have released reopening plans, if there's been more discussion on the community level about what people are comfortable with doing and what the schools are going to be doing. But, I was just wondering if this was a conversation you all were having in your libraries about supporting schools, supporting students, supporting families, seeing if there are any new needs that have emerged, if you have reopening plans announced, and if there are any ways that you guys are hoping to help, looking to help, wondering what to do, and if anyone has sort of thought of ways to address any needs that they've seen. So this is just kind of an open discussion. Jennifer says, for District 5 here in Kalispell, they have 600 signed up for online school. Wow. And Jennifer, is that kind of an opt-in sort of thing? People have the option to do online school or they can go in person? Starla said, the school here is in chaos. Families don't know what's happening. We have started a sign-up sheet for mobile hotspots and will probably designate a number of hotspots for students and families. Starla, that's really great to hear. Out of curiosity, are you, what are you thinking for the sign-outs for hotspots in terms of like length or how much they can use it? I'm sure there's going to be probably a lot of demand for those. Jennifer said that they had to sign up by August 7th for online school. I think in Helena, they're doing sort of staggered back to school for some of the schools. So some kids are going to be in the classroom, some kids are going to be online, and actually I should probably look that up before I say any more. Kara says a hybrid model in Helena. So it's going to be a mixture of in-person and online. Starla says that we aren't sure yet. The board feels that the school should step up first to support the students. Yeah, and also, you know, I'm sure that people kind of want to take the lead or take notes. What's that phrase? Follow the school's lead, is what I'm trying to say. And that's hard when the school is still sort of figuring out what they're trying to do as well. Jennifer said they are having in person also here in Kalispell. Suzanne just shared Alaska shared resources for supporting homeschoolers at another Zoom meeting today. And she put a link for that. So thanks, Suzanne. That's super helpful. I'm sure that's probably going to be an emerging group for this school year. And I'd be curious if you all have noticed that, if there have been more people looking for homeschooling resources. Starla said, we are all concerned about teachers trying to teach both in school and remote schooling at the same time. Yes. Yeah, I think that's a sentiment that's echoed all over the country at the moment. Yeah. Cindy from Plains is here. Welcome, Cindy. Any other questions, comments regarding schools and schools reopening or anything like that? So quick update from the school librarian meetup from last week. There were some questions about cleaning procedures and disinfecting and quarantining books and things like that. So I was actually able to share a lot of stories from public libraries and what you all had developed as your system. Yeah, I think it was a little bit, though, people were still kind of waiting to see what schools were planning on doing, and then going off of that to plan further. If you all are interested in attending the next school librarian meetup, that will probably be sometime in September, in the first 2 weeks. So you're welcome to come and see if there's anything of interest to you in those meetups as well. Any other questions or comments about this? Are there still schools and areas that haven't released reopening plans yet? Not sure if most schools start after Labor Day here in Montana. Starla said, we have actually committed to closing the building to staff and public for a full 72 hours every week. Basically, we're giving the materials a reset every week. Huh. Well, thanks for sharing, Starla. Jennifer says West Valley is only having 7th and 8th grade come 2 days a week. The younger kids will go all 5 days. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, well, maybe we can move on to just general discussion then. If you have anything and you'd like to circle back to this topic, feel free to let me know. This is something that I'm also hoping to have more insight and information on with the school librarians too, so I'll be sure to share anything to to the wider library community as it's relevant and pertinent too. And Christine from Plains says that Plains is 4 days a week. So thanks for sharing, Christine. A few announcements. As I said, the School Librarian COVID meetup is next going to happen in September. The exact date is to be determined. I've sent out a doodle poll with some available times and dates for the school librarians to vote and choose the time that works for most people. So I'm hoping to have that by the end of the week, and I will announce that on Wired. I also wanted to let you all know that the project, the Realm project, the reopening archives, libraries, and museums research project, the test 3 results were released. So I wanted to stick those into the chat box for you all. I think we're on link 9. And so there is a PDF there that has all of the test results in detail, but they were testing 5 different materials. It was a talking book USB cassette thing, a DVD, a storage bag, and a storage container, and plexiglass. So all kind of non-porous plastic sort of materials. And the results show that after 5 days of quarantine in an unstacked configuration, the COVID virus was not detected on the storage bag or the DVD. The storage container, the plexiglass, and the USB cassette did show detectable virus at 5 days. And day 5 was the final test point. So I think compared to previous test results from round 1 and round 2, this data suggests a slightly longer quarantine, but because this is also like plastic stuff, you could probably cut that down by like disinfecting with, Clorox or whatever that you all have been using. So even though the virus lasts a little bit longer compared to like a paper book, I think you can use disinfection methods to decontaminate things. Again, I'd encourage you to read the report. I was just kind of summarizing the summary stuff on the link page. But if you download the report, that will give you more details and more context. So yeah. Any questions about that? Right now, they are currently testing round 4 materials. And those should probably be ready sometime in September, I'm guessing. Any questions about that? And Starla said, okay, that's not the best news. Oh, I guess yes, for a longer quarantine time. But again, you can probably get rid of COVID virus in other ways compared to a book. So you'd still be able to clean things and disinfect things that way. So yeah, today actually was, I guess, a pretty short session. I think if you are good and would like to leave for now, you're more than welcome to, but the rest of the time I think we can use just for free discussion for any general questions, any new situations or issues that might have come up. Also, if any of you have just exciting news or something that made you smile, feel free to share that as well. Dehanza has asked, has anyone fully reopened? And Dehanza, I'm going to actually check the service page on the status map and see if I can find that out for you. Looks like most people are still Oh, actually, sorry, this is displaying weird. It looks like most places are, the building is open, but there are restrictions. Let me see if I can. There are, I think, 12 libraries that are open with no restrictions. Although this is only as updated as people have self-reported. So that could have changed depending on how things have gone. Let's see, in the chat box, Sandra Larson has said, we have sort of reopened. We are not using our late hours, but we are letting people in Monday through Friday, 9 through 5, as long as they wear a mask. Jennifer from Imagine If says, we were open 10 to 6, but now went back to shorter hours for public to come in and doing curbside. So now it's 10 to 3 for the public. Gahanza asked, do you have rising cases in your areas? Jennifer and Sandra. And Sandra says that we're actually 0 active at the moment. And Jennifer says, yes, we do. We are. Janet in Wolf Point says that we are rising. Joan, although I think Joan had said earlier that she's actually Cindy from Plains. We are open regular hours for 3 patrons at a time, all wearing masks. Trudy says, with it being a combined public and school library, we will have to shorten more hours so that public is not open during school hours at all. Starla said, we have the doors locked and are letting people in if they have a mask on. We had too many patrons refusing to wear masks. And Jennifer said, we also have issues with people wearing masks. And Dahanza, if you do want to look, let me actually grab this library status map. And you can take a look on there. Again, it says when the library last self-reported, but you can see which libraries are open with no restrictions, which libraries are open with restrictions or aren't open at all. And I'm sure all of the librarians would be happy to talk with you if you have questions with anybody.
Amelia, this is Jessica. I just want to jump in really quick. Yes, so the map, like you said, it's only as up to date as the libraries have had it. So I will send out another email to library directors and ask them to update it because I think it's been a while. So I think Sandra asked for it. I'll just send it out to everybody later today.
Mm-hmm. Great, awesome. Thanks, Jessica. Janet said that we are slower because of masks as well. Jennifer said yes, all over the place. Lots say that it is against their rights.
I've lost Amelia's audio. Am I the only one?
No, I wasn't talking. Sorry, Joe. I was just being quiet for once.
We can't have Amelia quiet. We just all freak out at that point.
Let's see. Jennifer said that our fair is happening this week too. And Jennifer, what fair is this?
She's talking about the Northwest Montana Fair in Kalispell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. It's fully open. They don't have a carnival group coming. Last I heard, anyway. I don't know if that's changed, but they are doing rodeo and all the exhibits and that kind of thing. It's a little scary, I think, but
yeah. Jennifer said no carnival, no beer garden. Pam says, I've heard other fairs going on too. Jennifer said it's very scary. I was driving through to St. Louis and the Sturgis motorcycle rally was happening. So there were a ton of motorcyclists on the road, and no one was wearing a mask or a helmet. I feel like actually on the road, a helmet's more important, but I guess that doesn't, maybe that's not cool. Starla said they did finally cancel our fare. And Cindy says no fare in planes. Also, real quick reminder, if anyone wants to save the chat box, you can do so down in the, when it says to everyone type message here, there's a little ellipse button next to the file button, and you can click on save chat from there. Any other questions? It sounds like people are still having some issues with patrons wearing masks or encouraging people to wear masks. I don't know if you've seen any changes in use from patrons, or if you guys have started to discuss ideas for after the summer. I know a lot of libraries have done things outside, which has been great and beautiful with our weather, but that won't be an option for too much longer. So if you all have started looking for ideas for the fall or winter, start thinking about that. Jessica just shared, I wanted to share our new public library statistics dashboard here. It's not necessarily COVID related, but it may be of interest. I would encourage you all to take a look at it. It's super cool looking, and it's a great way to look at everything in this really nice visual way, and check out all the public library statistics. DeHanza says, we seem to be doing well. If they do not want to wear a mask, they will usually walk away. Sandra said, we are slower. We are trying to figure out what other things we can do programming wise. Starla said, I'm trying to get my board to embrace Zoom. They aren't very excited about it. Yeah, there can definitely be a learning curve with Zoom. But you know, once they learn how to use it, they can use it for everything else. So maybe that's one way to entice them. They can also put some pretty cool backgrounds too on their Zoom thing. There's one for the Brady Bunch, there's space ones, there's all sorts of things. Jennifer said, people are having a hard time understanding accommodation when they can't wear masks or don't want to. They think we are not allowing them services. And yeah, I mean, I think earlier when the mask mandate first went out, and even before then when people were encouraging people to wear masks, I know that people can sometimes feel like they're not getting services, but I mean, I imagine in most cases, libraries are happy to be like, oh, well, you can't come into the building, but I can definitely get you what you want and provide you with curbside service. And so even though that's not the service that they necessarily want, it's still a service and is still very important. And Starla said, I think it's important with cold and flu season coming. Oh, I think referring back to embracing Zoom. Sandra said, I love the Zoom meetings. I feel like I've been so much more involved because I don't have to travel. And then she also says, we tell them if you don't want to or can't, we will provide service per curbside. And DeHanza said that is exactly the tactic we are trying our best to use. And I know a couple months ago, there were some struggles with particularly vocal public members of the public who wanted to express themselves and their displeasure at wearing a mask. I think it's, again, important to remember that, you know, no is a complete sentence. And I've read something about a technique called gray rock, I think, where You don't try to justify, argue, defend, or explain at a certain point. And you just say, I'm sorry, this is our policy. And to try and kind of be as neutral as possible. And at a certain point, if you're not engaging and feeding into their emotion, and then, you know, it's not that it's a fun interaction, but there's not really much for them to interact with. So I hope that you guys don't have to use that very often, but that might be a helpful way of envisioning it, where you're just a cool gray Zen rock, and you know, people can do what they need to do, and hopefully it won't affect you too much. Jennifer says that we're trying curbside and also personal shopper. Sandra said, "Ooh, that's a great idea, personal shopper." So yeah, that could be a great way of framing it too.
The ARSL conference next month, the end of next month and first part of October, has a super session that's like a half a day session on just this topic of basically difficult conversations and how to do them well. And it is by far of the 25 scholarships that we gave to attend that conference, it's by far the most popular session. I think it's partly that Kara is leading up the follow-up discussion on that, and she's popular, but I think it's also the topic, and could be either, might be both. Anyway, if you are interested in going to the ARSL conference, you can still register. We don't have any more scholarships to give out, but if you are going to that session, let me know or let Kara know, and you can join in on the follow-up conversation that we're going to have about that.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Yeah. Dehanza says, I love being a personal shopper for Reader's Advisory. We also have a few patrons just making their way through the alphabet for certain sections. We have genre sections. Oh, that's great. Jennifer says, one of my fellow staff members tried to explain and the mom took her mask off and got louder and she had to get a manager. The mom also said, I am not going to make you sick. Yeah, that's unfortunate. And I guess in some cases, no matter how you react, people gonna do what they gonna do. But at least, you know, hopefully you won't be expending unnecessary emotion and effort in the interaction either. Starla said, my high school age employee got the I'm a taxpayer speech. Unfortunately, he had yelled at her enough that she kicked him out. And that is unfortunate, but I'm glad that your employee had the self-possession and the empowerment to feel like she could tell him that that behavior is not acceptable, because it isn't. And yeah, it's sometimes, I know that it's sometimes hard, and the few times that I've had to deal with this, you know, it's so hard in the moment when emotions are running high. And, you know, I think especially we as librarians, we really want to help people. And so, and no one enjoys getting yelled at. But, you know, just remembering that it's totally okay to stop an interaction that's not going great. And it's totally okay if people are violating policies, no matter if they're a taxpayer or not. There's just certain things that you should and shouldn't do. And Starla said, this is a third incident with this patron. I am making allowances for people's fear and anxiety. And that is true. These are trying times and everyone reacts a little bit differently. Pam says, practice, practice, role play with staff so everyone gets used to staying calm and repeating the same statements over and over. That is actually super important. It's one thing to, you know, to be like, you know, in the shower and thinking about, I should have said this, or I should have done this, or, you know, blah, 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 after the fact. But really physically practicing these things can be super, super helpful. So that the first time you're doing it is not when it's happening right in front of you.
I had to be on airplanes last week. This is Joe. And so I got to hear what the airlines are saying. And I thought they had an interesting comment. This was a Delta airline. They said, you know, masks are required at all times, except when you're eating or drinking. And they said, we will gently remind you if you forget to wear your mask. And I thought that was a really nice way to put it. It was firm, but clear. We will gently remind you, is what they said. And we really appreciate you wearing your mask and keeping everyone safe. And we will gently remind you if you forget. So maybe that's
really
language that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments or questions? Or any other topics that you'd like us to do some research on to bring up for the next meetup? Jennifer says, we also have a number of customers thinking they don't need to cover their nose. Yes, I think that's something that some people have not quite understood. And I think that's also just like a reminder thing. DeHanza says, yes, Jennifer, we have had that too. I have verbally said, we need you to also cover your nose. Any other questions, comments? Jennifer says, is there research out there about the effectiveness of masks because so many people think they are not effective? And Jennifer, there's definitely a ton of research out there. I can try and find some stuff and share that out with the Wired email with the recording. But yeah, there's already been a lot of research that shows it doesn't 100% prevent transmission of the virus, of course, but you know, especially if people want to reopen, it's our most effective bet at preventing transmission. Starla says, we have it all documented if we have to make a decision, but this is challenging with me working from home so much more. So many problems just don't happen when I'm in the building. We are keeping staff separated as much as possible. And yeah, it is, like there are some things that translate well for working from home, and there are other things that it's just hard if you're not there in the building. And Jennifer said our staff is working in pods now. And I'm guessing in shifts. Is that what you mean, Jennifer?
They're working like 3 days, like Monday through Wednesday, and then days at home. And then the other group works Thursday, Friday, Saturday with Monday off, and just works at home Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay. So you guys are in those different groups that you call pods. Starla says, why do you get dolphins?
Actually, I'm not sure what they named themselves, but that was one of the options, was to call themselves dolphins, one of the pods.
Oh, really? That's funny. And Kara says that's similar to what they're doing in schools. Dolphin sounds more fun. You're right, Kara. That does sound more fun. Okay. I might actually go ahead and stop the recording here. If you'd like